How are we going, everybody? Just preparing some more beds here for planting. This is a bed that gets more afternoon sun than the morning, but it still gets a little bit. I reckon it gets about 10 o'clock onwards, so that's not too bad. Now, last year we had corn in this bed here, and over here I planted some zucchini and a couple of tomatoes as well. That last bed I didn't plant, and you can see how much in this third bed as well, where there's no actual compost added to it, and that's what I'm adding here, by the way. How much it's sunken. It was up here. It was only 2/3 of the way up, but it's dropped down about 100 mil. That's at least 100 mil. The first bed actually had more soil in that, and I just topped that up with compost, and that's our organic compost that we've got now available. Only by pickup only, folks, because it's just too heavy to ship out. Nevertheless, topic, if you're going to be adding compost, whether it's from your local garden supplies or you're making your own, when you finish your garden bed, and most of you have by now, and you're preparing your spring garden, if not already planted, but for those who haven't, the topic is basically about 101 reasons why you shouldn't dig your garden over at the end of the season. Now, at the beginning of my life, and I'm talking as a young boy with old man in the garden, I grew up learning to turn the soil, till the soil at the end of each season. Dad had a veggie garden in Coburg. He knocked down a house. So if you can imagine, you know, a row of houses in one street, the house has gone demolished, and he made way for a veggie garden from the front to the back. And he would plant rows upon rows of tomatoes, and your capsicums and chilies and so on and things like that. Now, at the end of the season, he would turn it over. He would add his manure. Admittedly, he only used organic matter, which is a great thing, but he did plant in rows. But the point here about turning it over, and look, I've struggled with this up until recently, understanding why we shouldn't turn the soil over, because I found that sometimes the soil needs to be turned over, more times than not, but it's really working with the soil and understanding the texture of your soil, the life of your soil, what's in there, and then what the effect is, you know, detrimental effect there is when it comes to turning the soil over. And the main one is the life in the soil. And we've been talking about microbes and bacteria, which is basically a bacteria, the good stuff. The bacteria in the soil, whilst you've got plants in there, are networking within themselves, the fungi and the plant root system. Now, once you take that plant out, ideally, and I should show you some things here. Come along, come this way, and I'll show you a couple of plants that we've cut out, but we've left the roots in there. And I'll tell you why we've done that. It's a bit of a walk. Plants and roots, the roots of plants and microbes, they network. Plants draw the sunlight as we are here now, absorbing the beautiful sun rays, the heat of that. They convert that into sugars and they feed off that. And some of those sugars, I should say, are given and fed down to the microbes, into a colony of bacteria in the root zone area there. Now, they request, or they communicate somehow, asking for certain nutrients from the bacteria. Now, not all bacteria produces the same type of nutrients. There's a bacteria for boron, zinc, potash, calcium, phosphate, things like that. And when the plant needs that, it'll give its sugars down. That's through what it does through the photosynthesis. And then in return, it gets the nutrients it needs. Now, what we do is we feed the bacteria, and in return, the bacteria gets strong and healthy and converts that nutrient that we give it into a palatable vitamin or nutrient for the plant, so you can absorb it back up. You can see these beds here in nice shade there, and that's what they need to be in the afternoon, especially on a hot day. We have been harvesting here, just here. Have a look at this. So we harvested a lettuce here a few days ago, but we've cut it flat to the ground. Sometimes it will germinate again, depending on how you cut it. This is a little bit low for it to germinate again, but most times if you cut it a little bit higher, you get another burst of foliage. But in this case here, we've cut it right to the ground, and this is going to slowly decay away, in a good way. The bacteria is going to feed on that, turn it into organic matter, because the bacteria needs its nitrogen, so it needs its leafy greens that you dig in. So imagine making compost as you do in the compost bin, but in real time here in the garden bed. And what you're doing is assisting it by leaving the root zone in there, because that's going to decay and that's going to become organic matter and feed off it, the bacteria and the worms and all the wonderful creatures that live within the soil's life. So By leaving it in there, not turning it over, you're not disturbing the colony of bacteria or the microbes. So when I say bacteria, I don't mean a bad thing. I don't talk about the bad, nasty ones. They live in here as well, and they fight off each other, but most times it's the good bacteria that wins the war here. So by not turning the soil over, you're not disturbing the colony, the network, the billions upon billions of microbes that live in here that create that wonderful organic nutrient matter that your plants feed off. And you can see how healthy these are. We've got some weeds growing here and there, but they're nothing. We pull them out, we maintain them down nice and low. Now, not only that, it's not only about the bacteria in the disturbance cycle of its life, because when you do that, it's got to sit there and rebuild it all again. And that networking takes, not forever, but it can take weeks, if not months, to happen. But when you do not disturb it, you're not disturbing the bacteria, but also you're giving your garden the opportunity, folks, to show you how wonderful it is for you without you having to lift a single finger or till anything or do anything else other than just give it a little bit of water. And what I'm talking about is this, yes, the humble tomato. Now look, we've spoken about, you know, self-germinating plants, the little volunteers that pop up out of the ground, but like the lettuce, this is one here exactly. Now I transplanted that from another part of the garden bed over here, and to my right over here, we've got another little tomato growing, and we transplanted another lettuce. Look, more tomatoes in here, everywhere. Tomatoes, lettuce, volunteer. Oh look, I didn't even plant that properly. See that? That's my bad. Now I've just got to bury that down like that. Now these tomatoes are from last year's crop or last season's crop, and they are germinating. Yeah, I know it happens with a lot of varieties, but the tomato for me is one of my favourites, and it does a wonderful job when it self-germinates like that, folks, and that's what you should be doing too. Not tilling it over. You could look. One thing that you need to do is analyse your soil. For example, this soil here, now we did top dress this already, but we never turned it over underneath. Now this is the top dressed area. Have a look at that. How good is that, eh? Holds its form, I put my finger in, it crumbles away, it's like cookie, and it's got lots of wonderful nutrients in there and different textures. That's what you want in your garden bed. Lots of different textures. These plants, look, these Asian greens as you're looking over there, folks, they're nuts, aren't they? One of the best varieties, or one of the best sort of veggies to grow in your garden. And again, we took the plant sleeves off. Do you remember a few episodes ago that we took the plant sleeves off? That we had on all these. They're doing well. I lost a couple of lettuce since we did that. And the humble kale, look, as soon as I remove the sleeve, gone, 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 gone. And if those tomatoes weren't enough, folks, look at that. They've got clusters of them going on here. This was another tomato bed there. And if I did turn it over, none of these would have germinated. Or if they did, very few would have actually survived. So turning over your soil, disturbing the microbes is a no-no, and you're disturbing the next cycle of life. Any seed that's fallen down or any plant that's gone to seed, whether it's a flower or a fruit, that's you've left it ripen completely, it's fallen to the ground, those need to be left alone because those will germinate on their own. So it's vital that you don't turn your garden bed over. Only time you should, and look, it happens probably more times than not, and that's basically because of the soil preparation you've done with your garden bed. If you haven't put enough organic matter into it, if you haven't put enough life into your soil, whether it's a sandy base or a heavy clay based soil, and you finish the cycle of growing in that season and you found it wasn't that successful, you know, you've had an average crop, maybe it wasn't the weather, it was basically the soil. Any of those could happen, but if it is the soil, and I shouldn't say maybe it wasn't the weather, maybe it was the weather or the soil, but more times than not, it is the soil. You can see this here, we've had some really rough weather. I was going to swear again, but I didn't. Good boy. And these plants are doing well. The only thing we've had are predators, pests that have come into the garden and chewed away at these things. Is that parsley getting eaten too? Wait a second. I'm just ignoring that for a second. Yep. Mate, these creatures out here, I'm gonna have to do a netting like this. So this is the wildlife netting in here, and you can see the only thing we had in here were a few snails, and we managed to control those with a little bit of snail bait. And apparently oats, rolled oats are pretty good too, but you've got to put that almost every day because they do swell out, and if you put too many there, you'll probably attract other rodents as well into there to eat them. But the snail bait works a treat, the wildlife netting works a treat as well, and not turning your soil over, as I was saying earlier, and I'll finish that topic off for you. If your soil's really bad, like this stuff here, leave it open, let the rabbits come in and do the job for you, because that's what's going on here. Thank God for that. So you can see rabbits are here and they're going next door and feeding again. So this has become really sandy. This will need a little bit of a scratch on the surface. Look at this, more tomatoes. More tomatoes have just germinated here. These are going to actually perform much better than last year. And this is a really dry bed. You can see how dry it is. It becomes silty. It's just dirt. It's not soil. It's just really bad, lifeless. This has to be raised. If it was really hard, that's when you turn it over. Break the crust. You want to break the surface tension of that soil. Crust over, loosen that up. Put some sleepers on the side or whatever you'd like to use as a wall to retain it, or simply just heap it up and have it sitting another 4 or 6 inches above. And like we're doing over here, folks, I haven't turned the soil underneath. That's been top dressed with compost. That's our compost. We're going to put a bag or two of our planting mix on top of that, which has got everything in it, and simply plant away. Underneath here is the soil. I haven't checked it. Let's see if it's going to... Yeah, it's gone sandy, but look, it's nice and loose anyway. So we're going to top dress this as we are like that. Put another 3 or 4 inches of this stuff on top with a little bit of planting mix. So top dress your garden beds, don't turn them over, add organic matter to it, and the more good stuff, rich stuff that you put on top, the quicker it'll work through. Those microbes will start working down below and the worms will come up and everybody will have a field day feeding on everything that you've put into the garden. And at the end of the day, you're going to benefit because your plants are going to give you a wonderful crop in return, of which you can take home to share with your family and friends and even your neighbours. They should be your friends too, by the way. Check out our website, vasilisgarden.com. Everything you need discounted every day. From me, Vasili, Maresi.